appeared on Howard Stern, where he said he'd even vote for a wall over Trump. Harris replied, "I'm not a wall, but I am plastered." New York Times opinion piece says we should abandon the idea of masculinity. "I'm way ahead of you," said
Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld just dropped an atomic bomb on a pop culture legend. They absolutely obliterated Howard Stern's ego in a takedown so brutal, the echo probably rattled radio waves and late-night sets for weeks. What started as a few well-placed jabs escalated into a full-blown verbal demolition, tearing through Stern's meticulously crafted persona like a hot knife through vintage vinyl. No filters, zero mercy. Just two cultural heavyweights exposing the supposed king of all media as nothing more than a hollow relic desperately clinging to relevance in a world that's frankly left him behind.
We'll say this, Dagan. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the Fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get.
No, you can't.
But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Because he had the affair with Jessica Hahn,
right,
who was the secretary, the hot secretary, and Jessica Hahn wound up Sam Kinison, and they had
I forgot about that. Yeah.
They had a terrible breakup. They would talk shit about each other on Howard Stern.
What do you think of what Howard's become recently?
Seriously, is there anyone else besides maybe Penn Jillette who's pulled a complete 180, going from red pill to blue pill right before our eyes? It's a spectacle. This wasn't just a takedown, it was a Category 5 ego hurricane aimed directly at the last few heavily curated hairs on Stern's head. If Howard genuinely believed he was still the undisputed monarch of edgy radio, Joe and Greg just shoved a mirror in his face and politely suggested, "Look again, Your Majesty, that crown's plastic and your throne's been repossessed." The whole thing started simmering slowly when Joe Rogan, that effortlessly alpha podcast juggernaut who can dissect quantum physics one moment and then give you expert advice on elk hunting the next, finally had enough of Stern's recent lecture tour.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine, or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back. Do I sound jealous? Yes.
Look, what he did, I mean, look, people to this day, they make fun of Howard Stern because of who he is now and the way he behaves now. That guy's the man. He was the fucking pioneer. When he was the king of all media and he was telling everybody to suck his dick, and the FCC was going after him, the government was fining him.
Yeah.
They were fining his businesses fucking millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he was out there doing wild shit.
Howard Stern has been moonlighting as a moral compass lately, which is hilarious because nothing screams, "Trust me, I'm an authority on ethics," like a guy who spent decades asking celebrities about their intimate grooming habits. And Rogan? Oh, he didn't hold back, with that signature smirk and a tone that basically says, "I lift kettlebells and I speak the truth." He just let it rip, no need to shout. He calmly dismantled Stern's freshly acquired, holier-than-thou persona like it was a defective squat rack from Walmart. The same dude who once bragged about naked strippers on live radio is now wagging his finger like a yoga mom policing juice bar etiquette. The irony, folks, is so thick you could grill a steak on it.
Because they were censoring everybody.
Right.
They wanted to lock Howard Stern up in jail.
I was on Howard Stern's show. He was great at that time, and then he went woke. And since he's gone woke, his ratings have gone down the tubes, and he sort of went anti-Trump for a couple of reasons.
They sued him. His parent company had to pay untold amounts of money. How much money did Howard Stern's company get fined? It was hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. Insane amounts of money. The government was trying to shut down a radio guy for talking
He was very angry at MAGA. He said, "We've got to stop MAGA." And I'm saying, it's Make America Great Again. Yeah, it sort of doesn't work so well.
And now that's the left. It's just patterns, man. It's just patterns where people can justify certain behaviors because it aligns.
And Howard Stern telling people how to live, Rogan muttered as if the words physically pained him. That's like Ozzy Osbourne giving TED Talks on pronunciation. Boom, just like that, the entire illusion of Howard's self-reinvention started to crumble. It wasn't because Rogan was being mean, it was because he was being surgically accurate. This wasn't an attack on a person, it was the meticulous peeling off of a mask. Stern genuinely expects to be taken seriously now, after 3 decades of endless fart soundboards and boob countdowns. That's not just rich, that's beyond absurd.
Man's been on with Young Thug, or
And
not
now,
Young Thug,
and now he's woke.
Miami.
It's crazy.
Trick Daddy?
Trick Daddy.
Yeah, he has to be, though, because if, dude, the skeletons, that guy.
Yeah, look at this.
God hates.
But just when you thought the verbal onslaught couldn't get any more devastating, in swaggered Greg Gutfeld, smirking, caffeinated, and absolutely ready to turn the wreckage into a full-blown comedy set. Gutfeld didn't just tiptoe, he kicked the door down wearing tap shoes. With the precision of a stand-up comic who moonlights as a political assassin, he began painting Stern as a washed-up rock star who traded his leather pants for judgmental cardigans. The visual, absolutely immaculate. Howard Stern now acts like your aunt who watched one documentary on climate change and won't shut up at Thanksgiving, Gutfeld quipped, barely bothering to hide his glee. And the roast didn't stop there. He compared Stern's evolution to watching a wolf slowly decide it's more fun being a poodle. Same fur, none of the bite, all bark, and instead of howling at the moon, he's scolding it for cultural insensitivity. The crowd was losing it, and not just with laughter, but with a palpable sense of relief. Because finally, someone had the guts to articulate what everyone else had been thinking. Stern, once the rebel voice of a generation, had morphed into a pathetic parody of himself. A man so desperate for legacy points, he's apparently willing to rewrite his entire history with a Sharpie and a prayer. Meanwhile, Rogan kept twisting the knife with that signature intellectualism meets bar brawl tone.
There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last, but they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists. He's living in the Hamptons. What would the Stern of now think of the Stern of before?
He meticulously broke down how Stern somehow went from fighting censorship to actively embodying it. How the very man who once fearlessly railed against corporate overlords now sips oatmeal lattes with them during corporate retreats. He's gone from flipping the bird to the establishment to applying for its internship, Rogan deadpanned, his eyebrows raised as if he couldn't quite believe it either. Meanwhile, Gutfeld was practically dancing around the smoldering ruins of Stern's reputation, gleefully throwing verbal confetti like it was a New Year's roast. He riffed on how Stern now strictly books guests based on their social acceptability, not their actual intrigue. It's like watching a punk rocker throw away his guitar and join a book club, he sneered. The only thing shocking now is how incredibly boring he's become. And it stung. Oh, did it sting? Because beneath all the hilarious burns and devastating analogies was a cold, hard truth Stern couldn't outrun. He's completely lost his edge. He didn't age gracefully, he just softened. Not in a wise, grandfatherly way, but in a way that makes you seriously wonder if the guy who once reveled in pushing buttons has simply replaced all of them with safety locks. Rogan even brought receipts.
This week on his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, dude, call me woke as you want. I'm not for stupidity, but I am woke, motherfucker, and I love it.
Oh dear, he swore. He swore that'll win over the woke.
It was contradiction stacked on contradiction. Rogan replayed the stark difference between then and now with clinical precision. One moment, Stern is relentlessly grilling Pamela Anderson about breast implants on air. The next, he's lecturing Joe Rogan himself about platform responsibility. The whiplash? Absolutely unreal. It was like watching Evil Knievel suddenly decide to become a school crossing guard overnight. And just when Stern's dwindling fan base might have hoped someone, anyone, would throw him a lifeline, Gutfeld circled back for his grand encore. This time, he brought the heavy-hitting metaphors. Howard Stern is like an aging magician who keeps pulling politically correct rabbits out of a hat no one asked for. He chuckled. Remember when his tricks were genuinely dangerous? Now it's just balloon animals and designated safe spaces. The room was shaking, but crucially, it wasn't out of hate. That's precisely what made the takedown so brilliant. Rogan and Gutfeld weren't foaming at the mouth. They weren't rage farming for clicks or ranting incoherently. No, this was surgical mockery, the kind that cuts not out of spite, but out of absolute necessity. It was like watching a once great artist steadfastly refuse to acknowledge they've painted themselves into a beige corner. They even playfully teased the idea of a Stern comeback, but not without a healthy dose of biting sarcasm. Rogan joked that all Stern needs is one more fart button and a stray stripper pole, and he might just remember who the hell he was. Gutfeld, ever the provocateur, offered to lend him a spine if he ever found the urge to challenge power again instead of sipping tea with it.
Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
The real mic drop moment, the one that probably echoed in the Hamptons for days, came when Rogan declared Howard doesn't fight the system anymore. He sends it holiday cards. The crowd roared. Howard's remaining fans, dead silent, and that silence said everything. What Joe and Greg did wasn't just comedy, it was an exorcism. They dragged out the ghost of Howard Stern's former rebellious self and forced it to sit there in the room while his current sanitized incarnation squirmed under the harsh spotlight. It wasn't cruel, it was profoundly cathartic, because deep down, people genuinely miss the old Stern, the boundary pusher, the disruptor, the man who dared to say what no one else would. By the time they finished, the audience wasn't merely laughing, they were nodding in agreement. In a world overrun by safe takes and virtue-washed talking heads, there's something refreshingly brutal about two guys saying what everyone else is thinking but is too scared to utter, especially when it's aimed squarely at someone who used to make a living doing just that. Howard Stern didn't just get roasted, he got unearthed. His contradictions, his moral gymnastics, his desperate rebranding, all of it laid bare in a comedic autopsy performed by two absolute masters of the mic.
This definition of woke, it's if you call someone a know-it-all, you're not complimenting them on the breadth of their knowledge. You're saying you don't know as much as you think you know. So yeah, woke doesn't have anything to do with vaccines. What it really means is sort of a slavish devotion to left-wing ideology and then repeating it so you can get social credit.
Right.
That's really what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're smarter than anybody. And he had said in another part of this that because I believe in the science. Well, if you believed in the science, you wouldn't be hiding out like Howard Hughes.
And now, Howard basically has two choices. He can either double down on this cautious, careful echo of his former self, a persona he's meticulously constructed, or he can finally take the hint and rediscover that raw edge he buried under layers of celebrity approval and self-righteous reinvention. But one thing is absolutely certain, Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld didn't just criticize Howard Stern, they reminded the world precisely why he needed needed to be criticized in the first place. And just when the verbal dust began to settle, Rogan leaned forward like he was about to reveal some deep cosmic secret and asked the one question that cracked Stern's entire facade clean in half. Do you even like yourself anymore, Howard? Boom. Not a punch, not a jab, an existential haymaker. You could practically hear the collective silence of a million boomers who grew up idolizing that wild-haired rebel, now suddenly wondering if they'd been cheering for a hologram this whole time. Gutfeld, never one to let a raw moment pass without twisting the knife just a little deeper, jumped in like a caffeinated sniper. Howard used to be radio's mad scientist, he said. Now he's the aging substitute teacher who hands out detention slips for using the word crazy. The imagery? Ruthless, accurate, almost poetic, if poetry came with a laugh track and a can of Red Bull.
So they fucked with him for 14 years. 14 years.
And that's not paid by the station, that's paid by him.
Fined owners of radio station licenses that carried the Howard Stern show a total of $2.5 million for content and considered to be indecent. Indecent. Like, why do you have those rules? Like, why do those rules exist? To keep obscenity from television and like, maybe that was a good idea in 1950.
But they weren't just taking pot shots at the man, they were dissecting a full-blown cultural implosion. Howard Stern wasn't merely a celebrity, he was once a potent symbol, a walking, talking middle finger to conformity. And now he's far more likely to wag that finger than flip it. He's traded rebellion for reverence, shock for safety, and his famous edge for Ellen's couch. Joe Rogan circled back with a metaphor so lethal it could have been weaponized by the Pentagon. It's like watching the Joker become a mall cop after he retired. But beneath the savage humor, there was a profound sense of disappointment. Because whether you loved him or hated him, Howard Stern used to stand for something. Now he stands with whoever's trending on social media and against whatever idea might cost him a dinner invite in the Hamptons. Gutfeld then started listing all the things Stern used to mock mercilessly: Hollywood hypocrisy, political phoniness, virtue signaling, the cloying desperation of fame seekers. And now, Greg said, pausing for dramatic effect, he is all of them combined. You could practically hear Howard's old soundboard trying to power itself back on out of sheer unadulterated shame. But then came the true kicker, the part of the roast that stung more than any joke ever could.
Do they still call it Sirius XM?
Still Sirius XM, and I've heard that it's Howard's money.
Yeah, but he has so much. Well, first of all, if he leaves, they're.
Oh yeah,
because that's like how many subscribers?
Yeah,
will bail when that guy leaves.
Dude, I did Howard Stern show 3 months ago, and I thought he wasn't in the room, but the way they have that set up is you really believe he's in the room, like almost like a hologram.
They tricked you.
Dude, I was talking to Howard Stern, but he was in Long Island or wherever he was, Florida, and I was in
The unstated truth was this: Rogan and Gutfeld weren't just calling Stern out, they were, in their own brutal way, inviting him back. With every insult, every jab, every devastating metaphor, there was an undertone of challenge, a dare, a quiet whisper beneath the satire saying, come back to the fire, be dangerous again, say something real. Because in the end, what they mourned wasn't merely the fall of a man, it was the chilling erasure of a voice that once dared to speak the raw, unfiltered truth, no matter how ugly, uncomfortable, or off limits. A voice that genuinely didn't care about sponsors or tweet storms, or how many retweets came from blue check therapists on Instagram. Now, that voice is buried under layers of publicists' carefully worded statements, and an approval rating curated with the precision of a Pinterest board. Gutfeld leaned back, his smirk fully weaponized. Howard Stern didn't evolve, he said. He got neutered by fame, by fear, by the very machine he once shattered with a single sentence. And Rogan, he delivered the eulogy, calmly, clearly, with a sense of melancholy that somehow hit harder than all the previous barbs combined. You can't call yourself the king of anything, he said, when the only thing you challenge now is your assistant's coffee order. Silence, then laughter, but not the carefree kind. This was the laughter of people who just watched a legacy get packed into a storage unit. But Rogan wasn't done. He painted a final haunting image. Picture this: Stern, alone in his multi-million-dollar mansion, surrounded by echo chambers and expensive art, replaying old clips where he actually meant what he said. That's the true ghost that haunts him, not regret, but relevance. And yet, beneath it all, you could still sense that Rogan and Gutfeld weren't rooting for Stern's failure. They were begging for his resurrection, because they know what Stern once was, and they know what he still could be if he just ditched the fear, torched the PR handbook, and remembered who the hell he was before corporate brunches became his war zone.